In money matters now, the JSE looks set to contend with subdued global markets this morning, with an absence of major data released preventing any clear direction. The U.S. markets were at record highs overnight, lifted by the passage of a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. The rand firmed back below 15 rand against the dollar yesterday. For more insight into how the markets are faring today, we are joined by Chantal Marx, Head of Equity Research at FNB Wealth and Investments. Chantal, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. So in morning trade, the local currency was flat at 14 rand 92 against the US dollar. Talk us through what is driving moves there.
So I think the rand is flat because there isn't really much driving moves at the moment. Markets are quite calm ahead of a very important inflation print from the US tomorrow. So I think we'll probably start seeing a little bit more volatility coming through overnight and then probably going into tomorrow. But for now, things are quite calm. Markets generally have kind of a risk on attitude, so that means that they're not afraid of risk, which includes emerging markets and emerging market currencies.
Right, let's take a look at news from Telkom South Africa releasing its interim result. The company had said in recent trading updates that it had benefited from a fall in financing costs, while foreign exchange losses also declined. How did they ultimately fare?
Yes, so as you mentioned, the lower foreign exchange losses as well as lower finance costs really supported the bottom line result. I think operationally it was probably on balance a little bit negative. That's just because revenue from the mobile business slowed down significantly. That said, the growth is still positive, and it does come off a very demanding base, because you'll remember last year over the same time we were in hard lockdown. Everyone was using a lot of mobile data. They were actually making a lot of phone calls. So it's very natural, I think, to have seen a slowdown in growth in this last 6 months.
MultiChoice says its profit had taken a hit of more than 40% after foreign exchange losses. Let's talk through the numbers.
Yes, so I mean, if you look at the results overall, it was very much negatively impacted by those foreign exchange losses, as you mentioned. But when you strip that out and you just look at the underlying performance, so what they did in terms of selling their product and what they actually had to spend on content costs and the like, it was actually slightly better than expected, and it was also a positive performance. I think in this case it was mostly driven by the South African businesses, but of course, longer term, the rest of Africa, I think, offers the most growth promise for MultiChoice.
All eyes on the midterm budget statement policy, with attention also on Eskom as we are thick into stage 4 load shedding. How are we faring on investor sentiment?
Yeah, so it's very difficult to say actually, but I mean, I think generally from a foreign investment perspective, it's been a little bit on the negative side. And the reason I'm saying this is just because you've continued to see bond sales by foreigners throughout this last year. That said, I think that there's a lot to be encouraged by when we look at the medium-term budget policy statement coming up. Specifically, that we've seen a huge revenue overshoot for government because of high commodity prices, so larger than expected royalties, and also corporate taxes tax collections being higher than expected, along with better than expected recovery in the consumer, really assisting with VAT receipts, and probably some better than expected personal income tax as well. So I'd say on balance, we're probably going to see a positive surprise on the medium-term budget policy statement relative to what government was saying in February. But I don't know if that's going to be enough to lift sentiment from foreigners, specifically because, as you mentioned, stage 4 load shedding just adds to what is already a very bleak growth picture.
Thank you very much to Chantal Marx, Head of Equity Research at FNB Wealth and Investments.